Number 10. The Crystal Skulls. The Crystal Skulls are much more than just the plot of the last Indiana Jones movie. These are legitimate skulls and some of the creepiest and most mysterious ever found. It started in the 19th century when roughly a dozen skulls were found carved from clear white quartz known as rock crystal. The skulls began making their way into private collections around the world, being dubbed as the Crystal Skulls. But they have been the source of great controversy ever since they came into the circuit. According to the people who say they discovered the skulls, they date back to the ancient Mesoamerica, crafted from people like the Aztecs, Toltec, and Maya. What's even more interesting is that some people believe the milky crystal skulls have supernatural powers within them. Some claim they have healing abilities or are even able to make a person psychic. Some also claim the crystal skulls come from Atlantis and that the Atlanteans gave them to the pre-Columbian civilizations. There are even those that believe these skulls are proof of extraterrestrials visiting the Aztecs. In 2008, the mystery gained even more fame when the movie Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull came out. But the truth is that scientists and archaeologists are skeptical as to whether the skulls are even real. None of them were found in documented excavation, according to History.com. Plus, the style and technique of the carved skulls does not match up with any of the pre-Columbian styles. Scientists at the British Museum in London, as well as the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History in Washington, have inspected crystal skulls and found traces of modern carving implements, suggesting they were either manufactured by people in the 1800s or by aliens in the past with future technology. Number 9. Alien-like skull in Korea. Archaeologists have unearthed an alien-like skull in Korea that looks an awful lot like it belongs to an extraterrestrial being. Of course, it's actually an ancient skull of a human, but the weird part is that archaeologists say it was not deliberately modified through any kind of known practice of cranial deformation. The skull was found at a site that once belonged to the ancient Silla culture of Korea. It was found inside of a woman's grave near Gyeongju, the historical capital of the Silla kingdom that ruled much of the Korean peninsula from 57 BCE to 935 AD, just about 1,000 years. The woman was in her late 70s when she died, with her body found inside of a traditional wooden coffin. Her skeleton was in pretty good condition, but her skull was in fragments that needed to be pieced together. Once fully assembled, scientists realized her head width was less than 75% of its length, making it look extremely bizarre and a lot like she was an alien. The earliest examples of cranial deformation extend approximately 10,000 years ago, all the way back to the Neolithic era. The practice has existed in many cultures all over the world, including in the Gaia Kingdom, which neighbored Gyeongju in Korea. Yunjin Woo, a physical anthropologist from Seoul National University, says that the skull was not manipulated using wooden boards or tightly wound fabric, which were both common practices used by ancient civilizations to make heads shaped this way. Nobody's sure how the woman's skull came to be so alien-like. Some suggest a type of medical condition, while other experts have suggested that she could be partly extraterrestrial. This woman could have been some kind of strange hybrid between an alien and a person, but unfortunately there is no evidence one way or the other. Number 8. Pirate Playground. A human skeleton has been found in a rather peculiar place. The skeleton of a man who was most likely a pirate in the 16th century has been found underneath the playground of a school in Edinburgh, Scotland. The skeleton was discovered by council workmen during the routine work. But imagine if it was a child who came across it. That would have not been good. It was later discovered that the school is located near a place called New Haven Harbor, which 600 years ago in the 16th century, the bodies of executed criminals were actually put on display. Archaeologists now believe the man was in his 50s and was probably executed for piracy, displayed on the gibbet or gallows, and then buried in an unmarked grave. The head teacher at the primary school where the skeleton was found said that the discovery was fantastic, and that archaeologists will now be holding a special lesson for some of the children about how they use science to analyze ancient remains, maybe even inspiring some of the kids to grow up to be archaeologists. What would you do if you or your kid was the one to discover a buried skeleton at school? Do you think it would be cool or creepy? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. Number 7. The Monster Skull. The skull of a giant sea monster has recently been studied using CT scanning technology by researchers from the University of Manchester. Using the CT technology, researchers were able to digitally reconstruct the skull, at which point they determined the 3 foot dates back approximately 200 million years and is the largest of its kind to ever be discovered. The monster skull belonged to an ichthyosaur. This was a marine predator, a type of aquatic reptile similar to porpoises and a distant relative of lizards and snakes. They were able to swim quickly through the water, just like modern dolphins, and have been known to exceed 43 feet or 13 meters in length. Lead author of the study, Dr. Dean Lomax, said, "The first time I saw this specimen, I was puzzled by its excellent preservation." He also noted that typically species from the early Jurassic period have been found squished, damaging the original structure of the skull. Ichthyosaurs of this age are usually pancaked, meaning they are squished, so that the original structure of the skull is either not preserved or is distorted and damaged. So, to have a skull and portions of the skeleton of an ichthyosaur of this age is preserved in 3 dimensions and without any surrounding rock obscuring it is something quite special. Just imagine a killer dolphin with flap-like appendages and sharp teeth the size of giant squid. It was a terrifying monster, and researchers were lucky to find one of its giant skulls. Number 6. The Antikythera skeleton. The Antikythera shipwreck is the most impressive and arguably the most mysterious shipwreck that has ever been found. It was the wreck in which archaeologists discovered what some have claimed to be the oldest computer known to humankind, referred to as the Antikythera mechanism. But the excavations have been going on here for years, and many more interesting objects have been discovered than just the one piece of the mechanism. Recently, a skeleton was discovered in the remains of the ship, and researchers have dated it back 2,100 years. Researchers are saying the skeleton could shed some much-needed light on the history of the ancient ship. Archaeologists are saying the ship could have been a massive cargo vessel carrying grain to be traded throughout the Aegean Sea. The human skeleton probably belonged to one of the sailors on the ship. Archaeologists found teeth, a jaw, the skull, arm bones, and leg bones, and a few other remains. They can't say yet if the person sailed and died aboard the ship for sure, but it is highly likely. What's really strange is that this has been the only skeleton found at the shipwreck since its original discovery in the 1900s. Bones are not usually found in shipwrecks because they are picked apart by sea creatures. The fact that the bones survived 2,000 years at the bottom of the sea is shocking. But as of now, we don't know exactly what that means. Number 5. Dragon Skull. In Africa, the terrifying remains of what some have claimed is a real-life dragon have been discovered. Nobody is sure where this monstrous skull was found exactly, but it appears to have fangs made for killing and unusual tusks used for tearing apart its prey. It wasn't found with any bones from the skeleton other than the skull, with its black empty eye sockets and its fascinating likeness to a mythical dragon. However, not everyone is convinced that the skull belonged to a dragon. Some say it's nothing but the leftovers of a dead hippopotamus. The hippo is the 3rd largest mammal on Earth. One might even call hippos pink water dragons. They are definitely the most dangerous animals in Africa, though they definitely don't breathe fire. Could this really just be a boring old hippo skull, or is it in fact proof that dragons once roamed among us? Number 4. The Haunted House. In Wisconsin, a group behind a local Halloween haunted house took things a little too far. Sure, haunted houses are supposed to be scary, but these guys took things to a whole new level of terrifying when they decided to put real human skeletons inside of their catacombs room. The 2 real human skeletons were hidden among fake skulls and plastic bones to scare Halloween enthusiasts. And to make things even more macabre, the skeletons were only added to the haunted house after the creators discovered them inside of caskets that they had in storage donated years ago. No one knew that there were human bones still inside of their 19th century coffins. The coffins had been hidden inside the haunted house storage until discovered during a recent remodel. But don't worry, these weren't the skeletons of murder victims. Instead, they were likely medical skeletons donated in the early 1900s. But still, is it even legal to use human remains as props for a haunted house? Number 3. The earliest homicide. The oldest murder mystery is a 430,000-year-old skull. The fossilized skull was found deep inside of a Spanish cave, and it shows clear signs of homicide. The skull suffered 2 fractures inflicted by the same object. Nobody is really sure who murdered this ancient Neanderthal or even what the murder weapon was, but according to NBC News, archaeologists are on the case. The skull comes from a funerary site inside what is known as the Pit of Bones. The skull predates Homo sapiens and proves that humans weren't the first to practice murder. There were 30 individuals found inside the Pit of Bones, though only one appeared to be brutally beaten to death. According to CT scans and the obvious evidence of blunt force trauma, researchers have hypothesized that the individual was probably killed either with a wooden spear, a stone spear tip, or even a rock hand axe. One researcher said that because there were 2 fractures and either of the wounds probably would have been lethal, the presence of both implies the intent to kill, making this the oldest cold case in the world. What do you think this person did to deserve such a brutal death? Number 2. The Female Warrior. A fascinating skeleton has been discovered in South Kazakhstan. The skeleton appears to be of an ancient female warrior in shockingly good condition. The skeleton was found with a massive sword and a dagger, and archaeologists have been able to date the woman and her weaponry back to perhaps the 11th century BCE. She likely led a small group of nomads through an area of what is today modern Kazakhstan. But, considering how long ago this happened, nobody can really guess where the nomads were going or what exactly they were doing. They were probably just a nomadic clan wandering through the steppes, and this ancient warrior woman was their leader. She was also discovered with a small cache of arrows and some pots and bowls. These extra artifacts suggest she was not only important, but wealthy as well. The artifacts will soon be exhibited in the National Museum of Kazakhstan. Number 1. Mexican Alien Skulls. In the Mexican state of Sonora back in 1999, residents were digging in an irrigation canal. This was when they found the original alien skulls of Mexico, what we know today as the first evidence of deformed human skulls. Artificial skull deformation is a practice known to have been used by the Chinocan tribe of the Choctaw of the US Southeast and the US Northwest. The site was found to contain the bodies of healthy children who showed evidence of cranial deformation, and throughout the years, researchers have been able to figure out that deforming human skulls, or more specifically infant skulls, was highly dangerous and often resulted in the death of the individual. But what else is really strange is that the people buried with alien-like skulls often had valuable artifacts buried with them, such as turtle shells and jewelry. This obviously means that those with cranial deformations were revered members of society. But could it also mean that some of the people buried with elongated skulls were in fact alien and human hybrids? And could it mean that the dead children who showed evidence of skull elongation were failed attempts to mimic the alien and human hybrids? Thanks for watching. What do you think of these bizarre skulls and skeletons? Do you believe in the legend of the crystal skulls? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more videos like these. See you next time, bye-bye.